Welcome back. Let's bring in our guest, Osezu Boludioku, educational psychologist and behavioral analyst, and the founder of F4S Aba Center, joining us virtually. Thank you so much, Ose. Can I call you Ose?
Yeah, good morning. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, I'm not muted. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Ose, can you hear me? Okay, so let's begin with what is considered compassionate parenting. And the reason we're raising this conversation or setting
If you
it as
can
an
hear me,
agenda.
I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, let's see how we can. Let's see. We'll quickly sort this out. Also, so let me ask again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, I'm not muted now, Abi. Okay, just an aside. So let's talk about compassionate parenting. And the reason we're bringing this to the fore is because of the issues around neurodiversity, which will help us break down. And you first of all explain what that means for the purpose of general reference and why this is important, because the cases are perhaps increasing these days, and the burden and complexities are not easy to deal with because a lot of people don't prepare for these things. So tell us about why this is very important for a lot of awareness to happen, especially in Nigeria.
Good morning. It's good to be here. So let's start by explaining what neurodiversity is, right? So neurodiversity says that is a movement that says that we are all different, that we have different types of brains, that our brains do not perceive the world in the same way, right? And then under neurodiversity, we have the neurodivergents and we have the neurotypicals. So the neurotypicals are the typical humans like we see in Lagos, and I hope we're typical actually. And then we have the neurodivergence. The neurodivergence is an umbrella term that covers individuals that have different conditions like autism, like ADHD, bipolar, OCD, and the likes, that perceive the world differently. And why is this important? Like you said, the prevalence rate is becoming more and more, like the numbers are increasing. And one would think that, okay, is it that we've not really had these conditions? Take, for example, autism. Is it that we've not had autism before? Like, why is it that the numbers are increasing? First and foremost, awareness. And then for an environment like our environment, where we look at our cultural our culture differently. For example, like we assume that the way a child is or the way a father is, that's how the child would turn out to be. So if a dad did not speak till he was 10, the parents just assume that, oh, don't worry, your own child will not speak that way. So beliefs such as that, but really and truly, the movement is so important because we have more of these individuals living amongst us, living with us, with so many gifts and talents, and we're not even tapping onto those gifts and talents. And we are not even accommodating them in our environment to even help them navigate these environments. So, I mean, that pretty much covers what we're talking about when it comes to neurodivergence and neurodiversity.
You said something in passing, and I want to just stay on it for a moment. When you said that, like, the people in Lagos are neurotypical, and you said, are we neurotypical? But you moved on. And I think it's a very vital point, because we always assume that everybody is maybe at the same level on the spectrum. And that's why we administer the same tests. And I'm not even trying to cast aspersions on any tests or examination. So that's why every student has to write JAMB. Because they assume that, well, you should be able to, once you're in secondary school and you want to go to university, that's the only way in, right? There's no other route. So if you don't cross that hurdle, you're not in, or you have to write SSC a certain way. Forgetting again that everybody's different across the spectrum. So what are the things you see now today that you think need to change if we need to be more you know, accommodating of the spectrum? Because you think everybody is on the same level, but no, we're not.
Okay, so when we talk about spectrum, like the neurodiversity, right, is like, okay, yes, we can call it a spectrum of different kinds of brains. However, that is a different spectrum from when we talk about specific spectrums like ASD, autism spectrum, right? ASD disorder, why I like to call it ASD, ASC, autism spectrum conditions, right? So for a situation like autism, the spectrum is it's very broad and it's blurry. So you have different features kind of blurring onto other features. Take, for example, you have a child that has autism and his features are he's flapping his hands and he can't stop hitting someone, and maybe this child is vocal, he has words, he can even sing, but he doesn't know how to communicate. And then you have another child that is very calm, that would just want to cuddle and wants some sort of pressure around them. So we are all really and truly different. What we can change in our environment, I would rather, I like to be very optimistic and very positive. I think that for autism to have first been called childhood schizophrenic condition or disorder, that means childhood madness. And now we have people that are aware that there's something called autism and it's not madness. I think that's really like, we've come a long way, right? So, and I think we're being progressive, we're going to get better at those things. However, there's a lot of work to be done. There are, take for example, the standardized tests like JAMB, you know, saying that that is the only way. Is that really the only way? We're in a country like Nigeria, we have different religions, we have different ways to do things. When we say that is the only way, I don't think that that is fair for all learners. I don't think that that is fair for every child, because a child that has ADHD, for example, would not typically sit down to listen to the class teacher, or would not typically want to just sit to do certain tasks. However, do they know? Do they understand? Perhaps even way more than the neurotypical child. And when you don't want to judge them based on written exams or written tests, I don't think that's fair. I think that's something we can really look into, standardized tests. Not everybody needs to take a standardized test, right? And then I've seen, as an expert, as a child development expert, right? I've seen when parents are fully involved in their children's development, I've seen the beauty and the changes that could occur. Why and how? You know, when you notice that a child is having some delays, some developmental milestones delays, right? You would, because you have a relationship with your child, you're a present parent, you would notice and you would start, that gives you the opportunity to start working on it. Because I mean, early intervention is early intervention for a reason. That is one thing that I see, that when we really embrace neurodiversity, we have a lot more individuals that can be empowered through the right therapy, right? So a lot can be done, a lot.
Okay, so from your research, maybe this is just trying to go back. You said that the number is increasing these days. What have you found out to be the reason for this increase in number in terms of diagnosis or scientific data?
I would say that one thing is certain is awareness and resources to diagnostic materials, right? So we have the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual, which we usually use to like get the criteria on which we can say, oh, someone has this particular condition or not. So people are more aware that there's something like this. Okay, if your child is having these delays, oh, we can check for this, right? However, I also think that there's a lot of misdiagnosis. So, take, for example, a child that is exhibiting pretty much toddler behavior, can be termed or classified ADHD, it depends on the environment, right? And the tolerance of the adults in the environment. So I think that really has kind of made it a lot more. And then we have the adults that are coming out to identify themselves as individuals on the spectrum that have autism and all that. So, I mean, somehow autism is kind of trendy, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's a very important, solemn, and relevant conversation. But this is the much we can take for today on the program for this conversation. I must thank you, Osazu. And Osazu Bolodioku, educational psychologist and behavioral analyst and founder of FOS Abba Center. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it. Well, that's it, guys. I almost said, guys, I forgot Bukola is not here.
Well, she'll be here tomorrow. But what a show it has been from the conversation around security, talking about our value for human life as a people, as a nation. We definitely need to do better. And I'm excited at the potential, at least if we're able to take these issues and fix them. There's a potential to have a much brighter tomorrow and a future. So that, for me, well, I say is a take-home from the show today.
We've said this over and over and over again. Africa has low value for human life, whatever it is. I don't know what happened to us. I don't think we're like that originally. But the way we practice, the way we run government, the way we do things, it's a clear departure from what it should be. Our Constitution, when it talks about your fundamental rights, I think in chapter 4, so the very first right it talks about is the right to life. And the ordinality of those rights, starting with life, is very deliberate by the framers of our Constitution. And so that's why we must always go back and say, where did we get it wrong as government, as community, as everybody, to value ourselves and value human life. That way, I think the change begins from there. Thank you so much for your time and company. As always, I'm Jeffrey Uzaman. Bye-bye.
Sunrise Daily is next, so stay with us right here on Channels Television and make sure that you respect people around you. Let's start from there. I'm Coyote Kikulu. Goodbye.